let me introduce myself in case you don't know me. Brandy. I am a nurse. I've been a nurse for over 18 years. I am a nurse practitioner. I am mom of 2 high needs girls, plus bonus mom to 2 now adults. I don't know what that's about. Yep, he's here. And so my journey into high needs children started about over 12 years ago, when my oldest turned, it wasn't quite 2.5, and she stopped eating. And at that point, I reached out to the pediatrician and asked for help, and they told me it was a phase. And we kind of went down that rabbit hole for what felt like an eternity, and kind of turned into an eternity because I persisted with it. I explained to the pediatricians she only ate 5 foods, and a lot of times that sounds like an exaggeration. It was by no means an exaggeration. She literally only ate 5 foods, of which Cheerios and McDonald's French fries were of the list. So we spent a very long time, about 3 years, pushing the pediatrician for help, because what do you do when you have a child with who quits eating, right? Like, who do you talk to? And eventually, at some point in that 3-year span, she finally started sending her for therapy. Not the right therapy. We saw a handful of therapists over that span of time. We went to speech therapy. We went to a counselor for some type of mental health. No one was able to figure out what was going on with my daughter. She was, 2, 3, not quite 4. They didn't know why she just suddenly stopped eating. Prior to that, had completely normal eating patterns, no issues, no signs that there was anything wrong, except for one instance when she was about 5 months old. She ended up hospitalized for failure to thrive. Nobody linked anything to that. Probably a big red flag looking back. But at any rate, about 3 years in, I became extremely fed up. I contacted multiple people at our children's hospital and told them our story, and they evaluated her. But during the 3-year span, I was told it was just a phase repeatedly, time after time. And that was kind of the breaking point for me, because a phase doesn't last for years. A phase is like a month, a couple months maybe, but phases come and go. We were years into this issue. I was advised to force her to eat, to which she would vomit. I was advised to provide her a meal and nothing else, and she would eat it when she was ready. And that child went 3 days with no food. I broke before she broke. So that said, that didn't work out real well for us. I decided I was not going to starve the child. So again, talked to the pediatrician. They were not concerned because her weight correlated with her height. Bearing in mind, her weight was under the 20th percentile on the growth scale. Okay? But her height was generally under the 50th percentile, so she was very short, like her mom. And because her weight was so low and her height was so low, they kept telling me there was nothing to be concerned about. Now, again, looking back, furthered my education, 2020 hindsight, right? She probably wasn't growing up because she was getting no nutrition. Like, I don't know why that was such a hard thing for them to realize at this point, but can't do anything about that now. But at any rate, I finally reached out to the Children's Hospital 3 years in, and they did an evaluation and determined she needed feeding therapy. Of course, the feeding therapy was at their hospital or a facility, which from where we live is nearly a 2-hour drive. I made the 2-hour drive. I drove her to the therapy once a week, every week for a year and a half. She graduated from the therapy, not cured by any stretch, but much, much better than where we were. I had tools to move forward and help her, which in itself was also a challenge because we didn't have any support. Our families weren't supporting us. Those closest to us in our inner circle did not support us. We were continued to be told, just make her eat the thing and stop coddling her. It was a very hard thing to go through. It's very challenging to sit and watch your child literally melt every time you put food on the table, even not on her plate. My plate, too close to her, would cause meltdowns. Unfamiliar foods would cause meltdowns. Eating out, impossible. So at any rate, we did this therapy. We reached a point of management with her. A couple years later, not even a couple years, she did backslide. And then, since then, we've kind of just been in this up and down phase. She's nearly 15 now. I have to be very mindful of where we are. Oh, and bearing in mind, she does give me permission to share this story. She doesn't mind. But now knowing what I know about the feeding disorder that she has, I have to be extremely mindful of her eating still, because there's a prelude in her feeding disorder that could prompt an eating disorder. And now she's in that prime phase of her life where eating disorders can kick in. So I have to continue to be very mindful, on top of the fact that nutrition is very important. And her nutrition is still not very good, but she eats food, and far more foods than what we ever ate before. So we're not reaching those concern levels at this point. But all of that said, when she was 11 and we were still kind of navigating these waters, I had my second daughter, who turned out to be my second high needs child. And she is 3.5-ish now. And at the time, I didn't realize, but she was basically high needs from the start. About 3 months in, she did not sleep, which, of course, like most parents, I was told this is completely normal. That's what babies do. That is not what babies do. There is a point in infant development where they do sleep. Honestly, like, aside from feeding, they are supposed to sleep. Mine would not sleep unless I was holding her, and even then it was very short-lived. So I went through the same channels. I started with my older daughter, told the pediatrician, we don't sleep. And this was a different pediatrician at the time, who said, try this and this. And at this point, I'm fully aware pediatricians are not trained to teach people how to teach their kids to sleep. There are several things, sleep and nutrition included, pediatricians don't go to school for. They get very brief insight on what should be done with some of these things, but it's not their wheelhouse. It's not a part of what they do as a normal pediatrician. It's not an illness. It's not part of their focus. So they might take some training on it so that they can guide us, but it's not a part of their general education. So I told the pediatrician, she doesn't sleep, I can't sleep, like, we're having a problem. She offered some tips, and we tried, and we weren't having much luck. At about 5 months, my mental health broke, and we started having a lot of issues. And then it was kind of all downhill from there. I tried to get help with my mental health, and the place that I went to was less than supportive. So I'll do this on my own. That didn't go so hot. But after that point, we found that the little one had a lip tie. Then she ended up failure to thrive. And then she had a speech delay. And then she had some physical delays. And then she started with sensory issues. And it just was a snowball effect. With the speech delay, we ended up with early intervention, which was probably a godsend, because with that option, I was able to quickly get more assistance that I needed. But again, the pediatricians wouldn't assist us. The only reason we knew she had a sensory problem was because I reached out to early intervention and I got physical therapy in for toe walking. And the physical therapist reached out to occupational therapy and brought her in, and they determined that she has a sensory problem. Still undiagnosed because a doctor won't evaluate her for it. So now we've exceeded our limitations for early intervention, and I have to reach out to local facilities to get extended therapies for her because I still don't have a diagnosis. So that I'm bringing in extra people to help her get the therapies that she needs. I'm still telling the pediatrician these things are going on, and the pediatrician's response is, when she's around 5 or starts kindergarten, we can evaluate her for increased needs. But until then, she's too young for us to do anything. I'm gonna lose my mind. That was pretty much my breaking point with this child. And I took a quick look back and I was like, I did all of this with the older one. Different scenario, same situation. And I said, I've had enough. This time, I put pieces together much quicker. I put a plan into action and I bypassed the pediatrician. I'm not having any more of this. And in that, with all my years of nursing, I realized doctors are doing this all the time. And I have to add, like, I don't cast any shade on providers. As a provider, I understand that we are limited in what we are capable of doing, and there's a lot of reasons for that, and I get it. But I worked with providers and watched them provide limited information to families, patients, etc. And I would come around behind as the nurse and pick up those pieces. And now as the family, patient, parent, I am being told, well, there's nothing we can do. We can't do anything about that. We have to wait. It's just a phase. This whole load of excuses as to why this is not an issue. And I know the red flags. I'm a provider. I can see the red flags. So what about these parents who don't know the red flags? What about parents who aren't familiar with how this works? What about the parents who assume because the doctor said everything is fine, that actually means that it's fine? It's not fine. I realized I'm not alone in this. There are so many other people who are going through the same problem and not getting the assistance they need for their children, and getting a plethora of excuses for that reason. Some people will continue to push like I pushed. Other people will go home and suffer because they don't know what else to do. And other people will accept the excuse they're given because that's what they were told to do. And I'm not accepting that. There needs to be an end to that. There needs to be education about that. This needs to come to a stop because it's just too much. And I said, I can't wait until she's 5 or 6 when she starts school and my mental faculties have gone out the window because this child is unsafe and doing things that are unhealthy and not appropriate. And we just want to wait until whenever she's bigger. Doesn't make any sense, does it? So that's my not story in a nutshell, because it's been a long several years.